Because I think if there's one infinite, limitless resource on planet Earth, it's human capability. There's no limit on our determination. There's no limit to our imagination. There's no limit to our creativity. And yet we're not shown how to be able to access that.
Best tips, strategies, and habits for your personal and professional success.
This model really is a framework for learning anything faster. So for people who are listening and watching and they want to learn a language, they want to learn Mandarin, music, martial arts, management, marketing, math,
any skill.
I think if there's one skill to master in the 21st century, it's our ability to learn faster. Like if there was a genie and a genie could grant you any one wish, but only one wish, what would you wish for? If it was only one wish, what would you wish for?
You know, most people would say money or this or that, but you think learning is the key?
I mean, I think a lot of people
I think being the Matrix, like downloading the Matrix, so I could learn jujitsu in a second.
Exactly.
If I can learn a language in a second, if I can have this skill.
So I think the hack a lot of people would do is if it was any one wish, they would wish for more wishes, right? Exactly. They would ask for infinite wishes. So the equivalent, if I was your learning genie and I could grant you any one wish to learn any subject or any skill, just like become a master at it, the equivalent, what's the equivalent of the answer of asking for infinite wishes? It would be learning how to learn. Because if you can learn how to learn, the world is yours, especially today, because nobody who's listening and watching gets paid for their brute strength, it's their brain strength. It's not your muscle power, it's completely your mind power. And the challenge is your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual, it's not user-friendly, and that's the reason why I wrote this book. But the Limitless Model is an explanatory schema, a framework for learning anything faster, and not only that, but really for accessing our human potential. Because I think if there's one infinite, limitless resource on planet Earth, it's human capability. There's no limit on our determination, there's no limit to our imagination, there's no limit to our creativity. And yet we're not shown how to be able to access that. And so this framework is a three-part framework. So these questions we ask are very important. Now there are three questions when I said there's turning knowledge into power that I want everyone to obsess about. I mean, this will make you a master.
Okay.
And if you get it, this is it. 3 questions to turn knowledge into power, because knowledge alone is potential power. Number 1, how can I use this? When you're listening to this podcast moving forward, every time you listen to it, I want you to ask yourself, how can I use this? Get obsessed about this, like even write it down. And this is where your mind can be very creative, because in here I teach the power of note-taking, because people don't realize this. When you listen to a podcast or you go to a summit or an event or have a great conversation with somebody, within 2 days, 80% of it is gone. We forget it. They call it the forgetting curve. And one of the ways to retain it is by taking notes, exactly what you're doing. Now, I encourage people to take notes a very specific way, is to put a line right down the page. And on the left side of the page, I want you to take notes. And on the right side, I want you to make notes. So on the left side of the page, you're taking notes. You're capturing,
lists,
right? You're capturing
quotes,
information. You're like, this is how Jim remembers name. This is how Jim reads a book a day or whatever it is. So you're on the left side, you're capturing, but on the right side, you're creating. Now that's a subtle difference. On the left side, you're note taking. On the right side, you're note making. What's the difference? Again, on the left side, you're taking notes. You're writing down the quotes and the strategies, the processes. But on your right side, what you're doing, the right side creativity, instead of your mind being distracted when you're listening, have it be focused on how can I use this? On the right side is where you're writing your impressions of what you're learning. How can I use this? Another great question, second dominant question I would ask is not only how can I use it, because you come up with all these answers, just like you start seeing pug dogs everywhere. It's like, oh, this is how I could use this in my relationship. This is how I could use it, in my career. Second question I would ask is, why must I use this? Why must I use this? We know one of the people that endorsed my book, he's on your show, is Simon Sinek. And one of my favorite books, I'm going to mention a lot of books, including your own, start with, his is start with why, right? And so why must I use this? So once you have all these ideas of how can I use this, why must I use this? Because if you don't have the reasons, you won't get the results.
Right. You won't care enough about it.
Exactly. Reasons reap results. I'm gonna give a lot of people a lot of quickisms here, because it goes from your head to your heart to your hands. You could affirm things in your head all day, set goals in your head all day, but if you're not acting with your hands, you're procrastinating, putting things off, check in with your second H, which is your heart, which are the emotions, right? Because we are not logical, we are biological. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, this chemical soup drives us to act. Just like people don't buy logically, they don't fall in love logically, they do these things emotionally. So find your emotions. And in this book, we really uncover and I decode motivation. Not motivation getting hyped up and dancing on chairs and then the next day not changing. We figured out this formula of sustainable motivation in this book. But the second question is, go back to why must I use this? Because if you don't have the why, you won't do the what. And then finally, the third question. First question, how can I use this? Write all the answers down, think about that. Second question, why must I use it? Gives you the energy and the fuel and the drive to do it. And finally, when will I use this? When will I use this? Because we know that one of the most important performance productivity tools that we have is our calendar.
Yeah.
Right? If it's not in our calendar, it just doesn't get done.
Yeah.
How many people will go, you put doctor's appointments there, you put, PTA meetings, you put meetings with your investor there, but are you scheduling your workout? Are you scheduling your meditation time? Are you scheduling your journal or your white space just so you can be a creative thinker? And if we don't write it down, it comes at the end and then you just, you never get to it.
The biggest lie in the personal development industry is that knowledge is power. It is. It's just you feel like you got points because you signed up for a seminar or a webinar, you bought a book and it sits on your shelf and it becomes shelf help instead of self-help because it just sits there, right? But it doesn't become, the truth is, what people don't tell you is all the podcasts, coaching, conferences, online programs, none of it works unless you work, right? Is that fair to say? Like you can't read a book on doing like push-ups and get benefit from that. It just doesn't work, right? So you have to do the work. So I'm asking myself, how can I use this? And I'm coming up with all these ideas. That's the creativity part. And then I'm asking, why must I use this? Because if it's not a must, you're not gonna do it because you have plenty of other things to do. Is that fair? Because there's a success formula, you capture on the left side of your page, head, heart, hands. You could think about things in your mind, set goals in your head and affirmations, KPIs, your objectives, but if you're not acting with your hands and you're procrastinating, raise your hand if you ever procrastinated before. Right, all of us. If there's a gap between your head and your hands, check in with the second H, which is your heart, right? The emotion. We do things emotionally. We are emotional creatures. We're not logical, we're biological. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, we're this chemical soup. And so we want to be able to activate that. So head, heart, hands, another way of putting it are our eyes. Information, that's good, great. But sometimes you can listen to a podcast, there's a lot of information, but there's no inspiration to use it. Fair? But sometimes you can listen to a speaker or learn something and it's inspiring, but you don't know what to do. Right? Is that fair? So you have information, you have inspiration, and then you have implementation, where you're doing it. And I feel like when you get all three I's together, you have the most powerful I, which is integration. That's my goal for all of you, is that when you read something, you listen to something, you learn something, it becomes part of who you are. It's integrated, here, here, and here.
The F.A.S.T. If you want to learn any subject or skill faster, the F is to forget. Forget. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people don't learn faster because they feel like they know it already. I'm going back to chronological age, but it's not chronological age, it's really the age of your mind and your heart. A lot of people don't learn because they haven't emptied their cup. Does that make sense? That you hear all these cliches, but there's truth in every cliche, that your mind is like a parachute, it only works when it's what? It's open. So this is the beginner's mind, right? So you want to forget about anything else than what you're learning here, temporarily. The A in F.A.S.T, so that's the curiosity state, right? The A in F.A.S.T stands for active, active. And the reason why I have you get up and shout out and do all these things is not for me. Trust me, I know the answers to most of the questions and everything, is the active part is learning is not a spectator sport. Learning is not a spectator sport. The human brain and the mind doesn't learn consuming information, it learns through creating it. Your mind doesn't learn based on consumption, it learns through creation or co-creation in this state. Does that make sense? So you have to be active. You take notes, you ask questions, you participate in it. How many people believe what you put in is what you get out? Right, so you're active. The S in F.A.S.T stands for state. So this is emphasizing the state. that all learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent. I never want to learn in a bored state, right? Most people, like when they read, they're in a bored state. How many people, you read a page in a book, get to the end, just forget what you just read? And you go back and you reread it, and you still don't know what you just read because you're in that bored state. How many people use reading as a sedative? Like you have this token book that's been inside of your bed for an embarrassingly long period of time. But if your state that you have associated to this activity called reading is falling asleep or a zero, anything times zero is what? Is zero. And people wonder why they don't remember what they read. So control your state. Finally, the T in FAST and be fast stands for teach. Teach. I recommend that throughout this entire gathering and beyond, you learn with the intention of teaching it to somebody else.
Number 2, killing ants is good for the brain. And I got this from a brain doctor, Dr. Daniel Amen. And ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts. And you talk a lot about mindset, and it's the words that we use. And so just be conscious of it, because your brain is like a supercomputer and your self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering people's names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet, because
like someone says, "Oh, I'm not good with numbers, and I don't always remember."
Exactly.
That
People
becomes
come
self-fulfilling prophecy.
to you all the time and like, "Oh, I can't do.
I'm shy."
Yeah, exactly. Or I'm not smart enough. And I always say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. So people say like, I can never be good at copy, or I can never learn to do online, you have to check that mindset. And so that's number 2 on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being great, encouraging, and just rate yourself. Another one is a positive peer group. Dude, like what's great for your brain is it's not just your neurological networks, it's your social networks. It has less to do with your biology, because here's the thing, this is the truth. Research is saying conservatively, people say, oh, I'm too old, or oh, this runs in my family genetically or whatever. Genetics and biology is only about 1/3 of that potential. 2/3 of it is what we're talking about now. It's your lifestyle, and we have direct influence. Now, some people believe with epigenetics that we have 100% influence on everything, on how our genes express itself, depending on that. Some people suggest that some of these genetic challenges, or like Alzheimer's, like that's like in our genetics loads the gun, but our lifestyle determines whether we fire it or not, right? And so that makes a big difference. So 1/3. So there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's just more of a trained memory and an untrained memory if you do the work. And so good brain diet. And then after that, movement. The third thing I would say, positive peer group, because who you spend time with is who you become. And we've all heard that before, that if you spend time with 9 broke people all the time, be careful, you're gonna be number 10, right? And the reason why, from neuroscience perspective, is you have these things called mirror neurons, and they're in your nervous system. These are your empathy, your imitation neurons. It's when you watch sports or you watch television or movie, you could feel what the character is feeling, and that's why kids also learn so well. They imitate you, right? Yes. And here's the thing. It's not your biological networks. It's like whether someone smokes or has a habit that disempowers them, it has more to do with your social, whether your friends' friends do that. Yeah. And so your mirror neurons, the reason why you become the people you spend time with, and you have to be careful and protect yourself, is because you start adopting and adapting their habits, their same behaviors, their same attitudes, their same thought patterns,
100%.
and that's
View
why
of the world.
Exactly, and that's why we become those people.
Yeah.
And so I would say on the other side, and we all know this, we could be around, you could do all the great techniques, you eat the best food ever, you could be moving, but if you have some energy vampires in your life, and sometimes it's our family, sometimes it's our friends. People like, why are you reading all the time? Like, why are you going to all these conferences?
Why do you listen to all that stuff?
Exactly.
Why do you have a coach?
Exactly.
You're doing fine.
Exactly. And part of it, I believe it could be sincere, but they could be sincerely wrong, right? Family could love you. They have some kind of secondary gain. They don't want to lose you. They don't want you to outgrow them.
It's
they don't
two
want
crabs
you
in a bucket, man.
Exactly.
They're like, don't cook too good.
Exactly.
Let me pull you right back down.
Or they don't want you to get hurt, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's because we give them the power to do so, and we could choose whether or not we do that.